In this video, I'm going to be using Photoshop's Generative AI tool to create a fantasy image. So in order to do this, I used a random generator and I wanted to create some spooky / Halloween fantasy ideas. The one I liked the best was a spooky mermaid, so that's what I'm going to go with. And I'm going to try and create this fantasy image using only the generative fill tool in Photoshop. So I'm going to be going from this to something like this. Watch until the end to see what the final image looks like. So I've chosen two base images. One is of this lady with some purple hair, who's going to be the face of our mermaid. And the other image is a forest, kind of greeny, mossy looking background. So I'm going to select this lady using the select subject tool, and I'm going to drag and drop her into the new background. I'm going to make this background larger, and I'm going to make it a landscape image. I'm going to use a generative fill tool for this, and I'm going to just keep the reflection part on the bottom of the image, as this is where I'm thinking the mermaid is going to go. So let's generate and see what the results are. Perfect. The background's great. It looks very Halloweeny. It looks very spooky. I like the green color. So let's make our subject visible again. Gonna adjust her until she looks about right. Now I'm going to use the lasso tool and I'm going to select around her so we can hopefully add some more of her purple hair on the right and more of a torso. That's where I've selected. Now let's click Generative Fill and click Generate. So it has created a torso. I'm not liking these outfits. The third generation is the best, so I'm going to work with that. I'm really trying to only use generative fill for this image, so it's going to be interesting. It might take me quite a few generations, but let's see how it goes. Okay, perfect. And now I'm going to select a bit more of her torso and the side of her hair again, just to tweak that generation. Type in mermaid. Hopefully it does something with this. Let's see. Okay, it's given her some sort of tulle skirt, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I do like the color though. So what I think I'm going to do now is, I feel like her torso is a bit too wide, so I'm going to select the part that I don't want and I'm going to generate this again. Hopefully it does the trick. So I think that looks better, even though it's cut off her arm. I'm gonna fix this. I don't like this tulle skirt, so I'm gonna try and get rid of it. I'm not sure if this is gonna work. I might have to give it a reference image, but let's see. I'm gonna type in mermaid again. Okay, so it's still creating this pom-pommy, fluffed out skirt, so I don't want that. I'm going to use a reference image, so I've just gone to find one. I like the scales on this one, so I'm just going to use that. I'm going to crop the texture that I want, and I'm going to drag and drop it into my image. Okay, so I'm just going to resize it and make sure it fits onto her torso, and it looks like a mermaid tail. I think that fits about right. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to give the generative fill tool some context of what it should be creating. So I'm going to go ahead and regenerate her top and her skirt / tail. So as you can see, her top looks more like a mermaid top with some scales, which it has taken from that reference image I've given it. So this is perfect because now that means we can also create the tail and hopefully it looks quite similar. So I'm really happy with that. Let's now select around the tail and regenerate this. Let's now select around the tail and we're going to regenerate this. Perfect. So those generations are quite good. I'm going to go with the first one. I've done a few more generations and I'm pretty happy with that. I also added in the rest of her arm. So that's already looking more realistic. Next, we want to create her tail. So I've got this vision of her tail sort of splashing out of the water on the side. It's quite nice. The color sort of matches her outfit, but it's a bit too bright and too blue. So I'm going to make a couple of color adjustments in a second. I'm going to use the brightness tool and I'm going to change the brightness slightly. And I think this does the trick. Matches the background a bit better. Gives a bit more of a spooky vibe, which is what we're going for. Next, I'm going to go to adjustments and match color. And I'm going to match the current mermaid to the background, as she's kind of looking a bit tan and it may be a bit too light. And she kind of pops out of the background, but we want to make sure that she's merging into the spooky background. So if you're not sure how to use this tool, I have done a series on how you can match your subject into the background seamlessly. And I go through all the steps. So you can just click up here and you can watch it now. So once I've done this, I'm quite happy with how she fits in to the image now. So next I'm going to select around her top and I'm going to make this a bit more green and a bit darker. That looks quite nice and it matches her tail, which is exactly what I wanted. So I'm going to do this for all the blue parts in this image. I'm going to make them a bit greener and hopefully it all looks quite cohesive. Okay, yes, it's looking exactly how I envisioned it, luckily. The tool I'm using this is called Color Balance and it always is very helpful, I find. And I usually use it to change or slightly tweak specific objects or specific things in a photo if they don't look quite right. So it's worked its magic here. And next I'm going to add in a mermaid crown or headpiece. The prompt I used was mermaid jewelry, but you can type in mermaid crown or whatever your subject is. I'm actually really happy with this result. And a lot of times that I generate jewelry, I'm never happy with it. But this is pretty spot on. So that's another trick. In the prompt box, you should be using words that are very specific to the image you're generating and what you want. I think if you do this, you're a lot more likely to get a more accurate generation. I'm going to use color match here again for the headpiece, and I'm going to slightly tweak it so that again it fits in with her outfit and with the background. So I'm going for a spooky aesthetic, so I'm just trying to keep that in mind. Cut off in the, so she's kind of been cropped and she doesn't really look like she merges in with the water. I'm going to select around her and I'm going to use the prompt ripples, as I think this will hopefully create some ripple effects around her torso and her tail, and fingers crossed she looks more merged into the spooky background. Okay, so ripples was definitely the right prompt for this. I'm liking quite a few of these. I think the third one's the best. I'm liking some of these, but I think I'm going to regenerate because I think we can do better. Perfect. That's exactly what I was envisioning. Okay, so I'm happy with the ripples. There's a few tweaks I need to make. So I've gone ahead and made a few more adjustments. using the color match tool and the hue tool, and I've added a few more greeny tones into the generation of the mermaid, so she looks a bit more merged into the background, which I think she does. And I've added a dark sort of gradient on the right as well, as I wanted to match the left dark gradient. I think it completes the photo. So I'm happy with this. I'm going to create a group with these layers. Then so this is another tip. I'm going to create a group with these layers. I'm then going to duplicate this group. I'm going to leave that previous group, and with a new group, I'm going to merge this all together. And what that does is I can then work with this new flat canvas that doesn't have any layers, and all the layers and generations I created are kept in that previous group. That's how I usually work.